What's going on, guys? It's K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. So summarizing yesterday super quick, Powell came out, 75-point basis raise. We saw the dollar index right here shoot up. We saw the S&P dump, and Bitcoin essentially just kind of continued sideways, right? We saw a pump before and a pull down afterwards. Now, a lot of people have been talking about this possible Fed pivot. Will the Fed actually pivot? Well, what if they just continue to raise rates to the point where they literally send us into not only a US recession, but also a global depression, and they're doing it intentionally? Now, I am going to talk about the charts today super quick. But what I want to discuss is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a very, very long time on this channel, and that's the idea of the Bitcoin milkshake theory. Yes, sounds pretty silly, but there are some ideas, judging by some of the things that we've seen, that do beg the question, will the US actually weaponize the US dollar by backing it with Bitcoin? This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time on this channel, and that's what we're going to go into today. This is very, very crazy stuff. And when you actually look at all the pieces of the puzzle and you look at what the Fed is doing, even though the UN is begging them to stop, they are crushing these other currencies, getting decimated, especially in these third world countries, and they know they can send us even into a recession. Why are they doing this? Is it just for ego, or is there something bigger at play? So, guys, this is a video you're going to want to stick around all the way to the end. This is some really interesting stuff, and I would love to hear your thoughts below in the comments. Please, today is a time for discussion specifically. So if that sounds good to you, you know what to do. If you're not subscribed, definitely consider it. And obviously, for my friends that are trading out there, I do just really quick want to go over what is happening in the charts right here. So you can see that we are looking to sort of find some support down here at around almost basically the $20,000 range. You could see right here, looking at this parallel channel that we've had, we do touch the top, we get rejected, we come down to the bottom, and right now we're sitting back above this heart line right here, and you can see that we did actually have a perfect bounce pretty much right off that $20,000 area. Now, I was saying to myself and to you guys as well that there was the chance that I personally thought Bitcoin could have came a little bit lower. I thought that we could have potentially retested this upward sloping trend right here, right? Or we could have retested this resistance right around that $19,460 level. We may not actually get that, but like I said, that is the area, not financial advice, but that's where I do have some buys, some longs right there. The next area, if we do just have the breakout, let's say we never come down to that area, we just break right through, well, then we're looking for confirmation above 20,740. So break above, that area right here, come down, retest, and then put in the long. That's essentially where I would be trading, not looking to short anything right now. Why would you? I mean, you could try, but we're all the way at the bottom. It would be a lot more dangerous to short than it would be to just wait for a good entry to put in a long. And just friendly reminder, guys, today is the last day for the $30,000 giveaway over at BitGet. If you guys are interested, use the link below so you can get those bonuses. And there is one lucky winner who's going to get $1,500. We're going to announce that either tomorrow or the day after. I'll let you guys know. Make sure you get subscribed and watch. And also, if you are interested in learning how to trade, make sure that you check out the tutorial popping up above. But as we've been, pretty much talking time and time again, Bitcoin remains on track. Everything that we're seeing here in the 4-year cycle just really looks like it's playing out exactly how it's supposed to be playing out, right? Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, I do want to give a major shout out to my buddies over at Debate Crypto. Now, I had this article pulled up this was like an article from 4 or 5 days ago. I just didn't know when the right time to sort of bring it up was. I couldn't figure out where to insert it with all of the news. Now, considering that we had Powell come out as hawkish as he did yesterday, saying, we're basically going to keep doing whatever we have to do. We don't care what we have to do. The guy has literally come out and said he doesn't care about climate change. He doesn't care about, recession or short-term unemployment or businesses and stuff like that. So why are they being so hawkish? Well, like I said, shout out to these guys because they made this video how Bitcoin will surpass gold's $10 trillion market cap. Now, if we come over here, there was this article that they were also referencing. Like I said, I've had this literally in my browser now for quite some time, and it asks the question, or it says the U.S. will weaponize the dollar by backing it with Bitcoin. Now, this is an opinion article by Luke Mikic, but I do have to say this is a very interesting and compelling argument. So, guys, we're going to do a little bit of fireplace story time. There is a lot of reading. Maybe just put your headphones on, relax, if you're driving or whatever, just kind of listen. You don't have to watch this video, but you got to listen to this. We're going to go over all of this, and I would love to hear your opinions about this in the comments below. Like I said, this is a lot of reading, but you're definitely not going to want to miss this. So, the Bitcoin milkshake theory, okay? So, you ready for this? The monetization of Bitcoin benefits one nation disproportionately more than any of the other. Like it or not, welcome it or ban it, the US is the country that will benefit most from the monetization of Bitcoin. Bitcoin will help to extend the life of the US dollar longer than many can conceptualize. If we move forward on the assumption that the dollar milkshake thesis continues to decimate weaker currencies around the world, these countries will have a decision to make when their currency goes through hyperinflation. And we've already seen this happening in places like Venezuela, places like Turkey, and now it almost looks like it's starting to happen to some of these second and first world countries, right? So some may choose to adopt a quasi-gold standard like Russia recently has. Some may even choose to adopt the Chinese yuan or the euro as their local medium of exchange or unit of account, right? But for the countries that may adopt Bitcoin, it could be too volatile to make economic calculations and use as a unit of account when it's still so early in its adoption curve. Now, I didn't even highlight this part, but this author says, I outlined why I believe the volatility of Bitcoin will continue to increase from here through 500,000 to $1 million and even $5 million per coin. However, it's still going to be quite volatile even on that way up. He says maybe once it gets around 30% of the world's wealth, then we'll see it stabilize a bit. And he also points out this chart right here that talks about the different lengths of adoption, the telephone, light bulb, car, audio, TV, airplane, whatever. And, obviously none of these happen overnight. And if you just look at Bitcoin, he says you are here. I mean, really, Bitcoin's only been around for 13 years, right? The white paper just celebrated 14 years from the time that it came out. So he goes on to say, the countries who will adopt Bitcoin will also be forced to adopt the US dollar specifically as a unit of account. Countries adopting a Bitcoin standard will be a Trojan horse for continued global dollar dominance. With recent developments such as Taro bringing stablecoins to the Lightning Network, imagine the possibility of moving stablecoins around the world instantly and for nearly zero fees. The Federal Reserve of Cleveland seems to be paying close attention to these developments as they recently published a paper titled The Lightning Network, Turning Bitcoin into Money. Since March 2020, the stablecoin supply has grown from under $5 billion to over $150 billion, right? So obviously, we could talk about Ethereum, and I do think Ethereum does fit this narrative. I think that'll also be up there as well. But let's just stick with Bitcoin for a minute because you can kind of see where the author is going right now. After the recent Terra Luna debacle, where did capital flow? Well, it flew out of these riskier stablecoins into more safe options like, for example, USDC, which is actually backed by cash and short-term debt. In fact, BlackRock, you can see right here, being the world's largest asset under manager, headlined a $440 million fundraising round by investing in Circle, but it wasn't just a funding round. BlackRock is going to be acting as the primary asset manager for USDC and their treasury reserves, which is now nearly $50 billion. So it was crucial that the US dollar was the main denomination for Bitcoin during the first 13 years of its life, right? Everywhere we go, we're seeing Bitcoin denominated in US dollars. Now, maybe if you live somewhere else, maybe you might be looking at it based on the euro or whatever, but let's be honest, for the most part, it's being denominated in the dollar, right? Compared to USDT or something. And this is, they mentioned that there's 85% of the Bitcoin supply that has already been released. So network effects are hard to change, and the US dollar stands to benefit most from the proliferation of the overall crypto market. So Let's fast forward. The US needs to find a solution to its debt problems and fast. Nations around the world are racing to escape the dollar-centric petrodollar system that the US for decades has been able to weaponize to entrench its hegemony. Hegemony, did I say that right? Sorry, guys. The BRICS nations have announced their intentions to create a new reserve currency, and there are a host of other countries such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, and Argentina that are applying to become a part of this BRICS partnership. To make matters worse, the United States has $9 trillion of debt that matures in the next 24 months. So who is now going to pay all that debt? Well, the U.S. is once again backed into a corner, just like it was in the 1970s. How does the country protect its nearly 100-year-old, what is this word? Hegemony? I've never heard this word. I know I'm an idiot, guys. We're going to learn this word together. Hegemony. Okay. Look, I just learned something live. Never really heard that word before. As the global reserve currency issuer and 250-year hegemony as the globe's dominant empire. Okay, guys, let's focus here. Let's focus. So, we know the BRICS are looking to ditch the dollar, right? They're looking to get out of it, right? Like if the dollar gets too strong, they're just, hey, he may be, the biggest kid on the playground. He's going to, kick our butts at freaking whatever tug of rope. Well, guess what? We're just not going to play with him. It's not fair. We don't like him, right? Maybe. Until late 2021, the author says, I held a strong view that it was mathematically impossible for the U.S. to raise rates like Paul Volcker did in the 1970s. At this stage of the long-term debt cycle without crashing the global debt market. He says, but if the Fed wants to crash, no, he says, but what if the Fed wants to crash the global debt markets, right? What if the U.S. recognizes that a strengthening dollar causes more pain for its global competitors than for themselves? What if the U.S. recognizes that they would be the last domino left standing in a cascade of sovereign defaults? Would collapsing the global debt market lead to hyper-dollarization? Is this the only economic wildcard the U.S. has up its sleeves to prolong its reign as the dominant global hegemon? What is this word again? This is terrible, guys. I should just redo all this. Is that how you, hegemon? Hegemon? Hegemon. I don't know why I've never heard that word before, and I don't know why the author's using that word so much. Anyway, while everyone is waiting for the Fed pivot, he says, I think the most important pivot has already happened, the Dalio pivot. So you can see right here in this tweet on October 3rd, he says, as John Maynard Keynes is credited with saying, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? Along these lines, the facts have changed, and I've changed my mind about cash as an asset. I no longer think cash is trash. Wow. Very interesting coming from Ray Dalio. I mean, you guys have seen him. We've talked about him. We've shown his interviews on the channel. And now all of a sudden he's saying, no. Cash might actually be a good thing. Does Ray know something that we don't? Well, he says, would the U.S. aggressively raising rates lead to a capital flight to the U.S., a country that has comparatively healthier banking system than its competitors in Japan, China, and Europe? We have to ask the question, why is Jerome Powell refusing to align monetary policy with one of our closest allies in Europe? You can see right here, they had the Green Swan event in 2021, and, pretty much he kind of pissed everybody off. So, he even says down here, bluntly, the limits of the Fed's approach as far as monetary policy is concerned, climate change is not a main consideration. Pretty much everything this guy has said, even when the UN, you had, Christine Lagarde basically begging, coming out saying, hey, can you please stop raising the rates? And they just kept doing it anyway, right? So is this a sign that the U.S. is no longer a fan of the Great Reset ideologies coming out of Europe? Why is the Fed also ignoring the United Nations begging them to lower rates? Since Powell's initial heated debate with Lagarde and the Fed's subsequent rate increase on the reverse repo days after, the dollar has decimated the euro, right? So whether the U.S. is at war with other central banks or not doesn't change the fact that the country needs a new neutral reserve asset to back the dollar. Creating a global deflationary bust and weaponizing the dollar is only a short-term play. Scooping up assets on the cheap and weaponizing the dollar will only force dollarization in the short term. The BRICS nations and others that are disillusioned with the SWIFT-centered financial system will continue to de-dollarize and try to create an alternative. They're literally doing it right now. We've been talking about this on the channel. In times of risk, people run to reserve assets as a way to get a hold of dollars. For the past 50 years, When equities sell off, investors fled to the safety of bonds, which would appreciate in risk-off environments. Well, guess what? This trade ultimately broke in March of 2020 when the Treasury market became illiquid. And also, this is one of the first times that we've actually seen gold falling along during these periods. If we look historically, we've actually seen gold do relatively well during rate hikes or high inflation periods, right? So does this mean that the world is also starting to move away from gold? Could be, possibly. The last time the US was in a similar vulnerable position was in the 1970s with high inflation. It looked like the dollar would fail until the US effectively pegged the dollar to oil through the petrodollar agreement with the Saudis in 1973. The country is faced with a similar conundrum today, but with a different set of variables. They no longer have the option of the backing of dollars with oil or gold. Dun, dun, dun. Enter Bitcoin. Bitcoin gives the US the one thing it needs for the 21st monetary wars. That's trust, right? Countries may trust a gold-backed petro, ruble, yuan more than a dollar backed by worthless paper. However, a Bitcoin-backed dollar is far more trustworthy than a gold-backed petro or ruble/yuan. Will the US realize that backing the dollar with energy directly hurts China and Europe? China and Europe are both facing significant energy-related headwinds and have both infamously banned Bitcoin's proof-of-work mining. For thousands of years, money has been backed by trust and gold and protected by ships. However, in this millennium, money will now be backed by encryption and math and protected by chips. I love that. It's like a poem. I'm going to post that on my Twitter. That's a beautiful, beautiful phrase. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, if you guys aren't, at the Crypto Zombie. The U.S. appears to be the Western nation taking the friendliest approach to Bitcoin. We have senators all across the U.S. tripping over themselves to make their states Bitcoin hubs by enacting friendly regulation for mining. The great hash migration of 2021 has seen the lion's share of the Chinese hash being transferred to the U.S., which now houses over 35% of the world's Bitcoin hash rate. This is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering in 2017, it was like less than 5 or 4%, right? Big, big, big shift. And you can see that most US states are in fact friendly. In fact, in this video right here, we have Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen talking about Satoshi Nakamoto's innovation.
In 2008, a person or group of people using the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto proposed a decentralized peer-to-peer system for making and processing payments. A key challenge in digital payments is to prevent the same assets from being spent twice. The Bitcoin white paper proposed a novel method for validating transactions using cryptography that addressed the so-called double spend problem. This and other innovations related to distributed ledger technology are the foundation for blockchain-based digital assets.
You have to admit that didn't really sound very negative. It actually sounded quite positive. Also, SEC Chair Gary Gensler continuously differentiates Bitcoin from crypto and has also praised Satoshi Nakamoto's invention. Let's also keep going down here. ExxonMobil is the largest oil company in the US and announced it was using Bitcoin mining to offset its carbon emissions. So here's the question. Why has Michael Saylor been allowed to wage a speculative attack on the dollar to buy Bitcoin? Why is the Fed releasing tools highlighting how to price eggs and other goods in Bitcoin terms? If you guys don't remember, they literally came out with a chart like a month ago pricing eggs in Bitcoin. Really, really strange, right? If the US was supposed to be banning Bitcoin, why is all of this being allowed to happen? And you can see there's sort of this Venn diagram here that says, all of this, the road, essentially leads to Bitcoin. We're transferring from an oil-backed dollar to a Bitcoin-backed dollar reserve asset. The author goes on to say, I find it awfully poetic that the country founded on the ideology of freedom and self-sovereignty appears to be positioning itself to be one of the most, to be the one that takes most advantage of this technological innovation. The Bitcoin-backed dollar is the only alternative to a rising Chinese threat positioning for the global reserve currency. What happens to our civilization if we allow a social credit scoring Chinese empire to rise and export its CBDC-backed digital panopticon to the world? Very Black Mirror, right? I was once of these people cheering for the demise of the US empire, but I now fear the survival of our very civilization is dependent upon the survival of the country that was originally founded on the principles of life, liberty, and property. 2020 was the monetary inflection point that will be the catalyst that takes Bitcoin from 3.9 global adoption to 90% adoption this decade. This is what crossing the chasm entails for all transformative technologies that reach mainstream penetration. He goes, there's a bunch of charts here. We really don't need to go into all this stuff. Ultimately, he goes on to conclude, this article was very centered on nation state adoption of Bitcoin, but doesn't lose sight of what's truly unfolding here. Bitcoin is a Trojan horse for freedom and self-sovereignty in the digital age. Once many of these power-hungry dictators are forced to dollarize and no longer have the control of their local money printer, they may be more incentivized to take a bet on something like Bitcoin. Some may even do it out of spite, not wanting to have their monetary policy dictated to them by the US. Money is the primary tool used by states to exercise their autocratic, authoritarian powers. Bitcoin is the technological innovation that dissolves the nation state and fractures the power the state has by removing its monopoly on the money supply. In the same way that the printing press fractured the power of the dynamic duo that was the church and state, Bitcoin will separate money from the state for the first time in 5,000 years of monetary history. So to answer the dollar doomsdayers, is the dollar going to die? Yes. But what we will see in the interim, de-dollarization, maybe on the margins, but I believe we will see hyper-dollarization, inevitably followed by hyper-Bitcoinization. Now, I know that this was a very, very, very large article, very huge to talk about, but it does really beg the question, is this true? Will they weaponize the dollar by backing it with Bitcoin? Because if you think about it, guys, ultimately, it is strange the way that they are acting, right? You do have the UN coming out and asking them these questions, and there is the issue of the energy, right? Now, the US has positioned themselves very, very well for renewable energy from what I'm aware of, and we don't seem to have any issues. You don't see, and not like in these other countries where, if you put your heat above 66 degrees Fahrenheit, you're gonna basically get a fine or go to jail, right? Nothing like that, right? So it is possible that the U.S. could, really, what New York has had an issue with it. Okay, New York is just kind of one of those states that just has an issue with everything. But for the most part, if you look at all the states and you look at the things that, Cynthia Lummis is doing and the way that Gary Gensler has been speaking about it and even Secretary Yellen coming out talking about it, we're not seeing anyone looking to ban Bitcoin. They're just looking to regulate it. I'm sure they're definitely looking to tax it, but are they also looking to weaponize it or the dollar by backing it with Bitcoin? Because as we said, most of the gold is manipulated. And let's be honest, China, Russia, they have massive, massive gold supplies, probably more than the US does. I don't know, does anybody really believe any of these numbers that these guys say? But, that is manipulated. It's way too widely distributed at this point, right? The oil-backed, petrodollar thing, that's kind of diminishing, right? They tried that, the petrodollar, wasn't that what they were doing in Venezuela? How was that working? I don't remember. But yeah, it does make you question if there is this ultimate incentive for hyper Bitcoinization, and will Bitcoin truly become the world reserve asset? Well, I'd like to know what you guys think about in the comments below. And it does seem very far-fetched right now. It seems like a fantasy, a fairy tale. It seems like something that could never happen. But I'll tell you what, in just the 7 years that I've been watching crypto, I've seen basically people calling it a Ponzi scheme, only used for buying, drugs, to basically being put on the balance sheet of things like Tesla, MicroStrategy, and being adopted as a legal currency in a country, El Salvador, and then also seeing Bitcoin mining, 35% of it now, the hash power is in the US. And also seeing politicians and, the SEC and Yellen and all these guys coming out and actually having positive things to say. Definitely crazy how fast times can change. And, thinking about how things are going right now, it does beg the question, will we inevitably go on the Bitcoin standard? And I personally think that it is the only true solution. That's what I feel. But that's my opinion. But it also appears to be this author's opinion as well. So let me know if you guys agree with this. I thought that this was a great article because, come on, guys. We're just going sideways right now. We're waiting to have this breakout to the upside. We've gone over the chart literally for 2 weeks. I really thought it was time to just talk about this. And, I got to give one more shout out again to my buddies over at Debate Crypto because I had been sitting on this article for like 5 days. And finally, I was just like, you know what? I got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. So let me know what you guys think about this below in the comments. I really do appreciate that. And that's basically it for me today, guys. So thank you so much for coming back to the channel. That was a lot today. I know a lot of reading on my behalf, but hopefully, you were able to listen to that. It was a lot of stuff to go over. I tried to highlight the parts that mattered. And kind of get the fluff out of the way. But it does make you wonder, and this is why, you got to say to yourself, why would you not want to own some Bitcoin? Why would you not just want to have a little bit of exposure? It's almost more irresponsible not to own Bitcoin than it is to own some Bitcoin, right? There's 21 million Bitcoin in the world. How many people now? 7.8 billion? Is that the number we're going by today? You guys do the math. Divide that. I mean, owning one Bitcoin, if we do get to this level of hyper Bitcoinization, is going to be impossible. It's going to be an unattainable thing. So if you could make it your goal just to simply own one Bitcoin, I mean, imagine the generational wealth that could provide for you and your family if this kind of stuff does happen. So that's it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. I do have to remind you again, today is the last day for the BitGet offer. $30,000 prize pool. One lucky winner gets $1,500. Check the link below in the description. And if you do want to trade, make sure that you check out this tutorial popping up right here, right now. Until next time, stay crypto. And of course, peace out.